Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Ukraine is facing mounting pressure from continued Russian attacks and the prospect of a spring offensive. Meanwhile, yesterday's online talks with US negotiators seemingly brought few results. Zelensky's Easter truce proposal was also rejected by the Kremlin, with more Shahed drones directed at Ukraine. However, there are emerging signals that a prisoner of war exchange may be held before Easter. Joining us now to discuss these topics and more is Andrii Osadchuk. He's a Ukrainian Member of Parliament from the Golos Party. Mr. Osadchuk, welcome to TVP World and thank you for taking the time. So,
thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So let's start with the front lines. What's the latest? Are we still pretty much at a standstill on both sides there?
Yes, honestly speaking, if you will have a look at the map of the battlefield for the last almost 2 years, the changes of the front line is in fact marginal. Yes, Russians made some progress in Donbas region, in Zaporizhzhia, but it's 100 maybe kilometers or something like that, and it's absolutely incomparable with the losses which Russia had last year and in the beginning of 2026. I think it's now common knowledge that in December last year, and it looks that in March this year, it was the record high losses of Russian army, which exceed more than 30,000 of killed and seriously injured Russians on the front line. So the war is where it is. And yes, we're still in this so-called negotiation process, or I would call it political consultations and dialogue, which honestly I never was believed on any success. But as you just mentioned, yes, we expect another prisoners exchange. And I think it's a huge achievement of all these dialogues during last year. I think we shall continue these dialogues forever, at least if we will have a chance to bring back our people from Russian captivity.
I mean, I want to talk about the prisoners of war in just a second. But, okay, as you say, you know, there have been numerous dialogues, numerous conversations and so on. But looking at Russia's attitude, I mean, President Zelensky proposed a ceasefire over Easter, and the Kremlin's response was to send a huge swarm of drones to bomb Ukraine. With an attitude like that, I mean, is there any chance that these talks are going to lead to any kind of peace?
No. It will bring zero chance for peace at the moment. And what Ukrainian side is trying to do is to be constructive. Because, yes, we understood the rules of the game of Donald Trump administration. And, yes, we have to follow these rules. And as I said, there is just a few positive things like prisoners exchange. But all other things is hopeless. For one simple reason that we have to repeat again and again in Ukraine for the last, I think, 4 years, that any negotiations initiated by third party or by Ukraine is considered in Kremlin as weakness. And for them, there is no any chance to stop the war where they are. I think if you will check all the statements from Kremlin, from Putin, he never ever said that they have changed their so-called objectives of so-called special military operations. So they never did that. So that's why they will continue to do what they did as long as they have resources.
Well, you mentioned resources. Now, Ukraine has been very successful in bombing Russian oil facilities on the Baltic and so on, to such an extent that, you know, the amount of oil that Russia can export has dropped dramatically, therefore, of course, cutting revenues that Russia can earn from oil. Is that having an impact enough to bring Russia to the negotiating table?
Not enough, but it is serious confirmation that Ukraine has a lot of cards on our hands, as Donald Trump likes to say. Unfortunately, all the sanctions introduced against Russia was more or less efficient, but as we know, very, very slow. And during all these years, Russia was able to adapt to majority of the sanctions. Yes, sanctions create a lot of discomfort for Russian economy, but no drama happens for them. During all these years, Russian oil was a fuel for the war. And it looks that Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian oil facilities is the most efficient sanctions against Russian economy. We were pretty much efficient and successful during last almost 1.5, 2 years in deep strikes, because I think you remember that first 2 years of war, we were limited with any capabilities to respond to Russian attacks when they were using drones and missiles against Ukraine, but we were not able to respond. Now we almost have equal opportunities. And despite Russians, we attack military plants, chemical plants, oil refineries, and we will continue to do so as long as we can. And as you know, our missiles and drone capabilities, despite all Russian attacks, still growing and dramatically growing. So we have a lot of resources to attack Russian oil, and we will do that further.
Indeed, as you say, you know, the position of Ukraine when it comes to drone technology is a world leader as things stand at the moment, so much so that President Zelensky visited the Gulf and a number of contracts were entered into in this field. What can you tell us about the outcome of that visit by the President?
I think that the biggest surprise of US and Israel attack on Iran, which we definitely welcome, because Iran is a co-aggressor against Ukraine, and we consider Iran as an enemy state to Ukraine because Iran is responsible for deaths and destructions in Ukraine. But what is surprising that Pentagon did not take into consideration all experience of Ukrainian war, which is absolutely different war compared to previous decades. And it looks that they were absolutely unprepared to fight Iranian Shaheeds and other drones. Due to that, I think, despite my opposition, political opposition to President Zelensky, I welcome his visit to Gulf countries. And I welcome and I believe that it's very important political and geopolitical success of Ukraine that Gulf countries, they are looking on Ukraine as a valuable partner who in fact can efficiently help to protect Gulf countries from Iran. So it's that unique situation that dramatic war in Iran, despite all limited resources which Ukraine has, is opening a window of opportunity for us. You know it, as I said before, that we dramatically increase manufacturing of our drones, but we can do much more if we will receive more investments to our military manufacturing. And I think one of the results of the visit of Zelensky to Gulf countries is exactly the joint partnerships with Gulf countries to increase manufacturing of Ukrainian drones. And we're definitely ready to share the unique Ukrainian experience on the front line.
Understood. Now, in the last minute or so that we have left, you know, Russia has heavily attacked Ukrainian cities, civilian infrastructure, and so on, which it has been doing since the start of the full-scale invasion. How is that being received on the ground, in the sense that is the resilience still there, or are people starting to get tired of this? Is there a fatigue with this war?
It's simple. We stepped into 5th year of this war. Since very beginning, no one believed that we will survive even 2 weeks. Yes, we finished very, very difficult winter. I think you know that during couple of weeks in January and beginning of February, it was almost -25 during the night in Kiev and in other regions, when we have very limited supply of heating, very limited supply of electricity, but we survived. Our energy sector is definitely heroes. They were able to stabilize the energy situation in Ukraine. For example, for the last almost a month, I don't remember when last time we have shut down in Kiev. And for today, what we do, we are preparing for next winter, learning all our mistakes and all the lessons from the previous winter. Meaning that Ukraine, yes, we're tired, yes, we're exhausted, but by definition, we are not going to surrender after everything what had been happening here. We will continue to fight.
Understood. Now, again, very, very quickly, I want to talk about conscription in Ukraine. There have been many reports of the conduct of some TCK units who are responsible for collecting people, to be conscripted into the army. And these reports are saying that TCK personnel are being extremely aggressive, violent, and dragging people out of cars and so on. What is the situation, and how is that being addressed?
Look, subscription was not easy in any country during any war, especially if we're talking about such a long war like in Ukraine. Again, everyone shall remember that we step in the 5th year of the war. Yes, we have difficulties. Yes, we have sometimes incidents, but majority of incidents are spread through internet, mostly by Russian agents, trying to make a huge deal from problems. Recently, I had a dialogue with the Ukrainian military commanders, and they said that, yes, there are a lot of rooms for improvement, but from 10, they score our subscription on, let's say, 7. Meaning that for the moment, they pretty much satisfied with the process. And just today, I had a meeting in the military university. They say that, yes, we have a lot of work to do with training and education, but everything what we have today is absolutely different comparing to what we have 2 or 3 years ago. Meaning that Ukrainian preparation, military preparation, and draft is going much better than it was before.
Understood. Mr. Osadchuk, as always, thank you very much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away. News coming right up. Goodbye.